Good afternoon, participants. I welcome you all in this webinar on deriving value from your data in the open source environment. I am grateful to all of you for sparing time from your busy schedules and participating in this discussion. Businesses today confront several challenges when it comes to leveraging data. Firstly, data resides in silos. Secondly, it is difficult to access and the quality of the data is also poor. Thirdly, data science skills are low in supply and high in demand. And lastly, optimizing database for cost and speed is often a Herculean task. Poor data quality spawns bad business decisions and causes compliance violation. This webinar will help to understand how you can maximize value from your enterprise data and how to make the data simple and easy to access for everyone in your organization. So without any more delay, allow me to invite Mr. Kitman Cheung, Technical Sales Leader, Asia Pacific IBM, to give his presentation on how can IT leaders derive value from their data. Over to you, Mr. Cheung.
Thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this session and spending your valuable time with me. And I would also like to thank Economics Time for hosting the seminar for us today. So my name is Kitman Cheung and I work for IBM Analytics in the Asia Pacific team. My job role really is to assist our clients from a technical perspective to be successful. So today, I'd like to share a few thoughts with everybody here on how to actually get value out of your data, be in an open source environment or otherwise, but really about getting value out of the data that you have in your organization. So to frame the discussion, I want to actually start off with a little bit of competitive landscape evaluation. So I'm sure many of you have heard of the Fortune 500 ranking. Now, Fortune 500 ranking was created initially by the editor of Fortune magazine back in 1955, actually. And the idea was to take the top 500 company listed in the USA and actually use that as an indicator in terms of which are the leading companies in business each and every year. So the annual ranking actually comes out, and in 1955 was the first set of ranking. Now, to highlight the competitive nature of what we're talking about in our business today, if you take a look at those original 500 companies that was listed in the 1955 listing and compare that list to the year 2015, you will know that only 61 companies remain. In fact, it is so competitive that in a recent study, the S&P 500, so another ranking in terms of stock trade used by Standard & Poor, of course, is actually saying that approximately 40% of all the companies on the S&P 500 this year will disappear within the next decade. The competitive nature keeps going. S&P 500 is a really good indication in terms of the acceleration of competitive nature of our business. If you look at lifespan of company in terms of company that's currently on the S&P 500, back in 1958, the average lifespan of the S&P 500 companies are about 58, 60 years. Fast forward to 1990, that number has dropped to 20 years. And in the year 2027, the projected time of lifespan of S&P 500 companies is going to be as short as 10 years. Now, that is how quickly things are evolving and it's only accelerating. Recently, Harvard Business Review actually recently released a study that they've conducted. And from that particular review, they're looking at companies listed in the New York Stock Exchange over the last 5 or 6 decades. And about 30,000 companies were listed. And they're looking at survivabilities beyond 5 years. Now, back in 1960, and in 1970, the survivabilities of a company listed on New York Stock Exchange after a 5-year period is about 92%. That means 92% of the company listed in started the listing in 1970, still around by 1975. Now, fast forward to the year 2009, the survivability is now gone down to 63%. So a lot of business executives are really looking at a very challenging time in terms of innovation and living in a time of digital disruption. If you take a look at the study here over on the right-hand side of the screen, three main areas come up consistently. One is the rapid pace of technological innovation. Number two, cybersecurity. And number three, increased regulation. Those are three main drivers and three main things that CEOs spending greatest amount of time thinking about in terms of these challenges. Now, IBM has conducted a recent study ourselves. We commissioned a study to look at how business leaders are actually coping in this ever-changing world. So 80% of the CXO that we've interviewed actually look at creating new business model and finding new revenue streams as being a critical element of what they do. And 81% of everybody that we had interviewed basically said that one of the greatest and most important things is to find a way to engage the customer better, to generate a bit more compelling customer experience. Now, in order to do that, major CEO on some of the largest companies in the world, including Airbus, Telstra, Barclays, Airbnb, and all these companies have formed new incubation and innovation lab within the last 3 years. 100 plus of these companies have done that to create a fast and flexible and agile way of changing the way they engage with the customer, bringing new models, bringing new products to the marketplace. So let's take a look at some of the main drivers around the digital disruption that we keep hearing so much about. I think a lot of us are really looking at digital disruption and thinking, well, why here and why now? Here's what I think are 6 factors that's really driving the digital disruption today. And these factors has taken time to come together. And today we're in this situation where all things are perfectly aligned, where innovation and digitization are coming together and creating new way of doing business. The first thing that we probably should look at is semiconductor technology, right? Computer chips are getting faster and faster. Back in 1968, I think if you were to buy a Cray 2 computer, it would cost you about $8 million, and it would do about 0.25 gigaflop in terms of computing power. Now you fast forward to 2010, your average i7 chip will do 100 gigaflop at about $270. At the same period, NVIDIA GPU chip will actually do 900 gigaflop for as little as $100. So semiconductor technology is advanced to a point where we can start dealing with data and computing in a way that drive innovation at a rapid pace. Mobile technology is another thing that's really coming into play in this age of digital disruption. The fact that we didn't have actually digital mobile phone until the year 1991. And from there, we've just gone nonstop acceleration. Currently, a 4G network, 1 gigabit per second is the transfer rate that we're dealing with. And that is only going to speed up with the upcoming 5G network, and that would actually come up 10 times faster to 10 gigabits per second. So now, not only do we have the computing power, but we have the connectivities to gather data as quickly as we need to. Then, with the amount of data and the computing that we're doing, cloud technology is becoming a key factor in terms of how to cope with all the mountains of data that's flowing in today. Cloud technology allow us to do things like distributed computing. Now, if you think about open source technology today, things like Hadoop and Spark are 2 prime examples of cloud-based distributed computing framework that allow us to cope with that data flow and drive insights. I don't really have to say too much more about big data. I think it's something that's been around for quite a few years now. So much data is being generated on an annual basis, and data that includes both structured data set that's inside our organization behind your firewall, as well as unstructured or semi-structured data such as video and sound and clickstream, the different kind of data coming in that all needs to be analyzed. What that has allowed us to do is to actually drive forward and learn from that data set. Machine learning techniques has been evolving. This is probably one area where we have some of the greatest evolutions in terms of open source based technologies that's being bring in that are innovative. New programming language such as Python and R and Scala are really allowing us as IT, as knowledge professionals to leverage the computing power that is in the cloud, that is available on the mobile devices. Basically, all of this together are driving a new set of artificial intelligence applications that we're building to engage with our customers. By artificial intelligence, I mean pretty much any computer agent that mimic humans' behavior and in a way help human beings complete their task is something that we can consider to be an artificial intelligence, at least from a corporate world perspective. So all these things are coming together and are really driving rapid changes, and we're seeing this each and every day. Now, let's jump back, right? We've kind of set the framework in terms of what we want to talk about. Let's take a step back and maybe examine the title of our talk today. The topic for today is deriving value from your data in the open source environment. So what we're really looking at is data as a set of raw material, right? This is probably one of the most valuable piece. It is the most valuable commodities that we in our organization have. The data that's behind our firewall, the data that we gather from our systems, the data that our customers share with us, either through social network, through email, or through transaction. These are the resources that gives us an edge, right? Knowing our customer better than somebody else gives us that potential edge. Now, an open source environment really is just about tool sets. It's about getting the most innovative tools to help us derive value from that data set. So let's take a step back and digest that. The most important thing that we are actually looking at is the data set that you own. Open source is just a subset of tools that we're working with, and ultimately we want to drive business value. So let me take maybe a silly example to see what I meant by that. So when you're choosing your tools, there are many things that you need to take into account. Certainly, how scarce are your resources? How difficult is it for you to find skilled professionals? That's going to be one aspect. The skill level that is available in your labor market, that's another aspect that we need to look at. Of course, time constraints, right? Time constraints is another key factor in terms of being able to deliver a project, deliver that value on time. And of course, finally, what does it mean when you're late to market? The cost of being late to market could be substantial in a lot of the industry that we work in today. So in the background, what you're seeing on the screen is hardwood floor. And I'm just using this as an example to illustrate what I'm talking about in terms of open source and tooling. So imagine you have a master carpenter, someone who's very good at woodworking. And of course, he's going to need some tools. Now, here is a hammer. This is a state-of-the-art hammer, carbon fiber shaft, chromoly steel hammerhead. It can do many different things. In the hands of a master carpenter, it could be used to build houses, it could be used to build furniture, and it certainly can be used to lay down hardwood floor. Over here, a little bit different, something we call floor nailers, something that's actually designed to lay down hardwood floor in buildings. In case you are wondering, I'm from North America, so hardwood floor is a big part of what we do in our houses. So in case the example doesn't quite resonate here, but the floor nailer is a very specialized high performance machine, if you would. With an average worker, an average carpenter, a floor nailer is extremely effective of helping complete the task of laying down a floor. And in the hands of master carpenters, it's going to help you build houses so quickly and so fast. So what is the point? What are the differences? Well, if you actually think of the hammer as potentially being something currently open source, highly customizable, something that you can use and start adjusting and changing to suit your needs, right? Your organization have skillful people who can take and leverage that particular tools to complete a variety of different things. And that customizability, that innovation is all built into the community, the open source community, as well as the tool and framework that's there. Certainly an important aspect of toolkits that you might want for your IT organization or for your innovation team. On the other side, floor nailers, think of that as something more to a proprietary technology, maybe a high-speed data warehouse. If the hammer is Hadoop and Spark, potentially your floor nailer can be considered as your high-performance data warehouse. Something that's designed to store something very specific, relational data store, transactional data set. That's what's being stored there. Now, with less effort and able to produce in greater speed, a data warehouse will be able to help you with a certain set of tasks much quicker, let's say in terms of interactivity, in terms of productivity, when you compare that to the open source world. But I think ultimately what I'm trying to say here is that it isn't about taking all open source or keeping all proprietary. Really is about providing a set of tools to your organization, to your knowledge workers, to maximize the value that they can drive with the data that you have. So you want to be able to equip your teams with the appropriate set of tools rather than thinking about where the tools are coming from. And that's where kind of IBM strategy really comes in. It's not really about open source versus traditional closed source proprietary type technology. It's not about being all on cloud or all on premise. It's not replacing your SQL warehouse with NoSQL and Hadoop and Spark unstructured store. It's about a combination, a hybrid combination of both sets of technology, right? Leveraging structured and unstructured data, using SQL and NoSQL, creating and storing data in traditional relational databases as well as an open source technology like Hadoop. And then deploying that both on premise and on cloud is the technology that we think our customer will get the most business value from. It's just because we have a new innovative set of technology, and open source technology is quite often the newest and the most innovative sets of software coming. That should be used in addition to the data asset and the technology that you have today inside your organization. It's a combination of those two that drives the greatest value for you. So from that perspective, let's talk about, let me change the topic a little bit. Let's talk about delivering business value through innovations built on your data fabric. Now, I'm highlighting the words data fabric here, and let me just get into maybe what this is about for a little bit. It's a term that's really been getting quite popular now. I think in terms of data fabric, at least in my view, is something that incorporates open source innovation into the set of data capabilities that you have in your organization. Your data fabric should provide simple access to all data sets. It should deliver trusted data and trusted information across your entire organization. And your data fabric should be AI and data science ready, right? To be competitive, to innovate quicker, to stay ahead of competition, I think access, trusted data veracity, and then AI and data science capabilities are going to be key values that you want to drive in your data and your insight strategy moving forward. So let me get into each one of these areas. First, data access. Ubiquitous data access through hybrid data management. So something that we really think is a strong strategy when it comes to taking the data, persisting it in your organization, and making it available to your team. Now, as data become more accessible, it drives more value. So as more of your organization can get access to data that they need in a timely manner, we are going to actually start building greater and greater data, greater and greater business value. Maybe I think we all are today, all the organizations that I work with are probably in the data, very much in the data-driven organization already. We are already starting to change the culture that has been there before, where data is being siloed into just small bits and pieces in different areas. I think we are breaking down those silos. We are spending time both discovering what and understanding why. In fact, I think majority of the people that I work with day in, day out, CIOs such as yourself, are probably looking very strongly in the space around predictive capabilities and data science and optimization, perhaps even using automation, leveraging AI to actually make our workforce more productive. And through those type of activities, where we're becoming more and more competitive, we will start realizing and be able to find new data and new business model and start creating, start disrupting the market that we all operate in. So real-time decision making, real-time analytics, things being instrumented, not just using transactional data set, not even just using social data set, but also using IoT data, using weather, using information even outside traditional data that we would consider to start forming a more comprehensive model. Because when we do that, that's when we start recognizing and realizing new values and creating disruptive capabilities that our competitors cannot, our competitors may not have come up with. Now, some essential elements around a hybrid data management strategy. Access to data, and by that we mean all types of data. NoSQL data set, your traditional transactional data, unstructured data set from social media, unstructured data set from email, from feedback, from voice transcript from your call center, unstructured data such as video. These are all coming in now. And in fact, these are all coming in and becoming more and more relevant to the overall engagement model and the data set that we're trying to analyze. Of course, we want the flexibility to handle all these type of workloads to make it consumable. Democratization of data set is actually quite important if you, from that particular perspective. I'm just going to get the highlighter here just so that I can start highlighting what we're talking about here. Democratization of access really is about people having ability to access data for themselves, rather than waiting for rather than sending an IT request, rather than dealing with the more lengthy process. We want people to be able to start accessing data on their own. Now, from that perspective, let's talk about some very specific capabilities. In a hybrid data management environment, in a hybrid data environment, where you can think of it as being a data lake, if you would, you should have the ability to handle various data sets. Repositories should be optimized to provide the best performance possible for a set of specific tasks. Each of these repositories, though, should have embedded machine learning capabilities. What I mean by that is the repository, be it a database, rather it's Hadoop or some other capabilities, it should be data science ready, that you can put data science and machine learning algorithm and have it be executed near data as much as possible, right? Instead of moving the data over to the compute and the algorithm, we want data repository ready to handle Spark workload, R workload, ready to run Python script, ready to actually produce that outcome without the data movement. Because data movement, more and more in our time, data movement is going to become our enemies. Needing to move data from one place to another before having the ability to perform analysis is going to be the enemies to innovation. We want the algorithm and the modeling and the machine learning to move to the data set, because network is always going to become a bottleneck, as you know. Next up, transactional and analytics processing all in one place. Again, this is from I'm a long time relational database technologist, if you would. So one of the holy grail of databases, of course, is to have the concept of HTAP, right, which is a hybrid transactional analytics workload processing, meaning a single data repository in one place, being able to handle different types of data, different types of workload, ingesting data at high speed, while at the same time providing insight at the speed of thought, rather than going through the traditional sense of OLTP system, migrating data into the OLAP system set, then to data mart. The market is demanding the ability to make real-time decisions. And to do that, it requires us to be able to look at operational data that drive insight directly in real time. So one key component in your data management journey, I believe is the idea of, excuse me, I somehow got a phone call. I hope this is not, I haven't been cut out. Common SQL's access engine. So in order to make data access easy, right, IBM believes that we need to leverage existing skill sets. Now, those skill sets primarily in our organization today is going to be SQL. So how do you make sure that regardless of what type of repository is being used, you could access data using SQL? This becomes one of the cornerstones of our repository design today. Right? We believe that in order to leverage existing skills, you can increase the productivity. You have more, if you would, you have more master carpenter working for you because you're leveraging skills and training that your knowledge worker has been exposed to already. And you're using those existing assets and you're building on top while introducing new capabilities. So things like SQL engine over Hadoop, SQL engine over Spark, for example. Both are open source technology. We have built a specialized high performance SQL engine that allows high speed and high performance SQL access to data stored in Hive table, for example, using one of our capabilities. And at the same time, we're working with the open source community around Spark by contributing to Spark SQL and other Spark framework to start driving innovation in the Spark space as well. Really, we do believe that that is a key component of harnessing the workforces that you have today. Of course, finally, supporting a variety of different repository as well as supporting different types of repository, while at the same time having them run on on-premise or cloud is another key component of what we would want to do. Now, we've got the right way to store that data, and we have the ability to provide access to the organization so everybody can use that data set. Next up, let's move up to the next level of what we would want to be able to deliver to our users in our organization. I think the next step up that we need to really look at is how do we deliver, not just deliver data, but deliver trusted data. So trusted data delivery is the second of the three main areas that I think will make up a great strategy on how you can get maximize value from your data set in your IT environment. So when it comes to trusted data, I think a lot of it has to do with governance. In the industry, I think there's been a concept of migrating over from governance 1.0 from the left-hand side to a governance 2.0 set of concepts. In 1.0, governance 1.0, primarily when we used to talk about data governance, is about regulatory compliances, is about audit trails. It's typically an IT-driven concept because of something that require in terms of legal e-discovery or GDPR or BCBS 239. Those are the driving force and driving factor. Now, I think through all my experience when I used to talk to customer about governance and around that space, one of the most troubling thing that I always run into is that when it comes to something compliance driven, it is all about what is the risk and exposure versus how much it costs for me to mitigate that risk, right? The discussion is about a cost saving, minimal spend to satisfy the requirement. But that's really, really quickly changing in the recent conversation that I have with customers. We are now starting to talk about governance 2.0, which is really more about getting value out of data by understanding the data set and knowing that we can trust that data set so that we can make smart decisions on that data set. Instead of being, when someone come and ask if we have stored the right business record, the question now becomes, are the business record, are the data that I'm looking at accurate enough that I can make sound decision based on that data set? So when you move to this new era, it's more and more about allowing data access through API, creating self-services analytics capabilities so that a different part of your organization, be it line of business user, call center agent or data scientist can all get access to the data at the level that they need in order to drive stronger and better business decisions. The compliance angle is still there, but I do believe that trusted data delivery is critical in order for you to make that transformation to get to become a more insight-driven organization. So a simple use case, agility, right? It's a very big part, self-service data and analytics. What you really want to be able to do is run through this development cycle in 30 days or less. When I talked about the 100+ company that has created new incubation center and new innovation lab, one of the key things that they're looking for around data is the ability for a data scientist, for a data engineer to shop for a piece of data in a trusted data environment, provision it in an environment that they can work with, share that environment across a larger team so that everyone can be looking at a common data set, start shaping that data, and then using some open source technology of their favorite type, maybe Jupyter Notebook, maybe Zeppelin, a set of different capabilities to start creating model, maybe using R, coding in Python, having all that capabilities built in, and then publishing the model, managing it, putting it in production, and then walk away in a 30 days period, right? Rather than creating environment where we need to provision boxes, purchase software, ETL job, everything being request driven, where in an older paradigm, you would probably be looking at much closer to a 6 months or even a year period in order to create this type of innovation. In today, high performance company driven by analytics, they're all looking for this ability, this agility, so that they can come to market sooner with new innovations. And the concept of failing fast and trying and iterating is so critical in the success of creating new business model innovation today. Now, there are a few areas that IBM is doing a lot of work in order to help. And I don't mean just IBM. I think that it's critical for you to evaluate when it comes to this trusted information delivery capabilities. So one of the things that we've got to pay attention to is the amount of data sources and the amount of data incoming is ever increasing. There is new data coming into the database. The data themselves are changing. Now, it is very difficult in order, to deliver trusted data across the organization without the appropriate tooling. So I think in the governance 1.0 timeline, if you would, the key things to think about, and IBM has been working with client on that, is to understand data lineage. Where did the data come from? What type of transformation has it gone through? And how did we get to the output end where data is being delivered to downstream application? Much of that work is done with having an appropriate metadata catalog. And that's been, I would say, best practice around a data 1.0. Please excuse me, I've got a slow connection. I hope you guys can still see everything okay. Okay, it's asked me to stop sharing the webcam, I believe. Anyway, let me continue. So that is where we were at in some way in governance 1.0. But moving forward, with the amount of data that are incoming at the speed that it is coming in at, most of the studies that have read are talking about something like 2.5 billion gigabytes of data per day. This is data that's being generated every day, and everybody's trying to make sense of what's going on. So one of the things that I think a comprehensive set of data delivery tools should have is to actually leverage machine learning. Right? What we want to do is to be able to automatically, using machine learning capabilities, using analytical technique, start doing automatic data discovery. Right? Instead of having a human being to start evaluating data set and having a human worker to actually go and evaluate table to table what kind of data are actually there, why not use a AI agent or some kind of automated agent to actually do that discovery? So I think we need to look for tools that can help us do that. Right? Then once you've figured out what data you've got, the next step, I think, will require to some level automatic data classification. Instead of once again taking on the manually intensive work of classifying data sets, such as which column or which row of data might be sensitive. There might be PII information in that particular database. Instead of doing that manually by hand, I think an intelligence agent should be able to actually help with that. Right? So building into the strategy of this trusted data delivery should be automatic agents that help the knowledge worker with the task of classification, term assignment, automatic data profiling, so you can start providing data quality score automatically to downstream users. So instead of just saying these are the columns that you can use and these are the tables, each of the columns perhaps should have a data quality scores that help understand if that data is accurate, if that data has many missing values, if that data has out of range value that should not be there. All these things are now becoming a critical part of managing data that in such a volume that it's no longer possible to do on a manual basis, right? Having this, now what this means is that instead of having your knowledge worker doing the manual work of classification and discovery and data quality profiling, if you would, you start moving the worker up to a supervisory position where you start defining data governance objective, where your organization start to create rules and policy that can be enforced, where your organization can then measure and monitor. And by measure and monitor, we're now starting to experiment, and we must experiment as you know, CIO and IT professional. We must start looking at how to measure the value of data to the organization, because our company are asking us, when for every dollar we spend in technology, how do we start measuring what that technology, what that investment translates to in terms of actual revenue and cost saving at the far end, if you would. So we really need a new framework that can do all those things, that can deliver the data from source to downstream application to end to the business user, and at the same time having policy to govern to make sure that the right people have the right access, and then having the right KPI in place that can help us measure the benefit of delivering that data. Now, final of the three topics, right? Being AI and data science ready. I think a lot of us are very excited about the innovation that artificial intelligence and data science are really driving. So from this perspective, really we can take a step back. AI is such a broadly used term today. Realistically, what an artificial intelligence agent really is any computer program that try to mimic a human decision-making process or something that a human being would normally do. So it's not it's not just strictly what we think of, you know, Terminator or HAL or any of these kind of science fiction, but there's varying degree of data science and analytics techniques that's being used in terms of creating an AI agent. Now, we're all very familiar with AI agent when it comes to the interaction with human beings. So machine vision is whenever we talk about visual recognition, people immediately think, you know, that's AI. When we start talking about things like voice recognition and speech to text, and then potentially having a chat bot and so on, those are, a lot of people start to think that might be, you know, more the artificial intelligence range. But I think realistically that is and that's fine. That's part of that particular that's part of artificial intelligence. That is the interface that is to the outside world and to the human users, right? However, in between, there's a lot more to it that leverages what we primarily will consider to be data science and so on, where the internal reasoning and the internal analysis that takes place to make a decision to do something, right? So instead of using a rules-based engine, machine learning, right, where a computer is continuously examining the data, looking at the different conditions, and then making choices or making suggestions, then reevaluating the outcome to learn from them, right? Machine can actually do that either through neural network, through traditional machine learning techniques, clustering analysis, data mining, all kinds of different techniques can be used. So when it comes to analytics portfolio, you want to be able to use various techniques depending on the type of task that you're performing. We've always started with descriptive capabilities. I think that's just describe what is happening, so traditional BI reporting. Certainly one critical element in terms of helping executive and helping human being make choices. What is happening? Why is it happening now? Predictive capabilities, so machine learning and predictive modeling is certainly a very strong aspect. Perhaps somewhat overlooked today, capabilities around prescriptive analytics, the ability to do something about what we predicted. I always often joke about, so you can predict the future. So what? How do you actually take that prediction, that knowledge, that insight? How do you turn that into something that you can operate, that you can act on, so that you get the outcome that you want? Right? I often looked at various things. So even if you can predict what will happen in the stock market, let's say tomorrow, but to maximize the amount of profit that you would make, you have a bunch of trade-offs that you have to make in terms of what to buy, what to sell. You got to take a look at how much capital asset you have. That is what prescriptive is about. Maybe you have a reasonably accurate of what may happen in the future, accurate model of what may happen in the future, but prescriptive capabilities helps you with making the choice that optimizes the outcome, maximize the amount of value that you can get from that insight. So that's where prescriptive comes in. All of this, along with the external sensing, the speech to text, the machine vision, the video analytics, those pieces in combination coming together is what creates a new generation of AI capabilities, right? These AI agents will interact with the user in a natural way, maybe through natural language, sharing pictures. They would then give feedback to the end user and help them make smarter choices. They would act a lot like human beings, but underneath is certainly using predictive and machine learning, neural network, prescriptive capabilities in order to optimize and help human being make the right choice. Now, let's focus in a little bit on the data science components, right? From a data science perspective, we always look at that as being a team sport. There are many people involved in any data science project, right? This is one of the things that I think many of us, when it comes to AI and data science practice perspective, that's where a lot of customers are spending a tremendous amount of effort in creating the right team to innovate and to drive new solutions, and again, to drive value from the data set. So there are many people that are working in these teams, and one of the big challenge, I think, around the space has to do with the ability to collaborate. And in an enterprise environment, when you have data sources, hundreds if not thousands of data sources coming from various places, then it falls back into what we talked about trusted data access and about ubiquitous data access as well. That whole chain will allow us to create a team that can collaborate effectively, where everyone is looking at a shared data set as opposed to a siloed set of data. Everyone has the best information available to participate on this team sports. Now, a few things that I will mention that is particularly interesting, because from our perspective, there is a lot of open source technology being used in this space. And IBM, as a company, along with Hortonworks, is putting a lot of effort into the open source community and actually contributing to this space. In fact, from a committer and contributor perspective, you might be surprised that in the Hadoop, and in fact in the entire Apache space, the combination of Hortonworks and IBM outpace all other companies 4-1 in terms of committers. right? No other company has the number of committers in Apache project as we do. So it might be a surprise to some of you that we are quite active there. And I think the most active area that we're investing in, and both in contributing to the open source community as well as using open source technology, is around the area of data science. So a couple of things to point out. Machine learning is a very big part of the IBM future and strategy in terms of strategic direction. And from that standpoint, we've taken the system ML, so one of our long-standing proprietary machine learning libraries, and we've contributed that to strengthen Spark ML project in Apache Spark in order to really drive machine learning into the open source space. And of course, we are then using that open source technology in-house to create new solution for our customers. So again, you could choose to adopt the technology, or you could choose to actually use capability built around it. And the choice is really based on the few things that I talked about: the amount of skills, amount of time, and what does it mean when you miss out and you're not the first to market. So machine learning is one key component and key areas that IBM is spending a lot of effort in and actually contributing to. Data science is another component. I think we can all understand that data scientist is probably some of the hottest talent commodity in the market today. Everybody and every company is looking for top-ranked data scientists, and there simply aren't enough of them to satisfy the demand today. Now, from that perspective, I think this is where I think data science experience as a tool really comes in. Data science experience is a tool that you can either host online, or you can actually have on-premise, that support data science and data scientists in their day-to-day activities. It's built on open source. It's built on Jupyter Notebook. It's built on Spark. It's built on Python and Scala and all the technology that the data scientists themselves love to use. But what we're doing is actually creating an environment that make what they do easier and more enterprise ready. Let me share an example. If the data scientist on your organization, using open source tools without the discipline of an enterprise IT practice, you tend to get silo of data science assets. We spend a lot of time breaking down silo around the data. But what about data models? What about sharing of those models across organizations between team members? You need to create the tool set that can help with that. You need to have the tool set to help data scientists to version what they do, to have the same kind of discipline that you would do on application development today, right? So I think part of what we're investing a lot of effort in is creating a collaborative environment where the junior data scientist can learn from their senior colleague, and a senior data scientist may be a lot more productive through the use of again, machine learning and AI capabilities. We are actually creating intelligence agents inside the tools that help with model selection, that helps data scientists with models configuration and parameterization. So that, in a way, makes your senior experienced data scientist more productive. The collaborative environment makes it easier for the junior data scientists to learn from their more experienced colleagues. And then overall, we've also created an environment where deployment of these models into web services has become easier. We're pushing out brand new predictive models as web services into an environment. And then once it's deployed, also creating the toolings to monitor the performance of these models. Because as you create more predictive model to look at different offers, to look at different marketing campaign and so on, these models get deployed into your ecosystem, into this environment. You do not want that just to be left there. You want to be able to continually look at the performance? Has the predictive power started to drop off? If it has dropped off, what can you do to bring it back up? You want to be able to have that monitoring and automation all built in. So the integration between data science experience and now machine learning capabilities really is about an end-to-end solution to take data science has created models all the way to production, but also to monitor those models for performance degradation. So the key is to take the asset and to take the innovation and make it enterprise ready. Now, all the pieces that we're talking about that I've been talking about really kind of makes up the data layer of a full architecture that IBM has been building over the last 15 years. Alongside with that data layer, we also have a cloud layer that allows you to flexibly deploy that capabilities across a variety of different infrastructure. And then on top of that, we're also building the AI layer, such as conversation capabilities, visual recognition, speech capabilities, things like natural language understanding, right? Ability to capture data from Internet of Things, ability to start analyzing human emotion and tonal analyzers. These are just some of the AI characteristic type APIs that we're bringing in. But the most important and most interesting part is we truly start to develop innovation platform where we leverage state-of-the-art infrastructure. So Power AI, brand new AI accelerating chipset and server set that we're creating in partnership with NVIDIA to provide the highest performance infrastructure on the cloud layer. And then going up into an area where we start delivering more data capabilities that I've been talking about during this session, and then marrying all of that with the AI capabilities so that we can start delivering application on the front end so that our customer that I'm working with in industry can start creating state-of-the-art solution around AI that really drives that next generation of business. And I think with that, I'm going to stop. I think I've gone a little longer than I thought I would, but I think I can open this to question next. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kitman. That was a very insightful presentation. We will now open up the webinar for question and answers. I will request the participants to please type their questions and we will read them out for Mr. Kitman to respond. Yeah, so we've got a question from one of the participants. He wants to know what are IBM's offerings for machine learning and AI?
Okay, sure. From IBM, there's quite a spectrum. So from a user tools perspective, our lead offering in data science would be our data science experience, DSX for short. In fact, you can find datascience.ibm.com would land you in the web-based version of that capabilities. That is built on open source technology, and on top of that, we added an extensive amount of capabilities around collaboration, around model management, model deployment. We also will help our customer manage model using something called Watson Machine Learning Service. We can deploy a model that the customer has developed and start deploying that onto a web-based API so that any application downstream can use it. Of course, we still work with Hortonworks to deliver a data science engine around Spark capability from that space. Data warehousing, that's standard. SPSS, our analytics and data science product. These are just but a few of the product that we offer around the data science and machine learning space. Now, from an AI perspective, we have a set of what's an AI-based API that allows computer system, allows per application to interact with the external world through conversation, through video that's incoming by understanding images, speaks different languages and so on. So there's quite an expansive set of building blocks that you see on the current slide here that helps build AI and machine learning and data science applications.
Thank you, Mr. Kitman. We have another question. A participant wants to know that a robust data governance program ensures that CIOs and CXOs can derive the maximum benefit out of their data. What does a successful data governance policy encompass?
Okay. Data governance is certainly very interesting and something that I'm quite interested in. So there are, I think, from a data governance perspective, the concept of data stewardship. So an owner that looks after a particular data set, and then that's a key part of the starting block or the starting building block of a data governance policy. I think fundamentally, right, we need to look at data as a valuable asset to our organization. And from that perspective, just like any valuable asset, we always consider a few things, right? One, where is that data, right? So where is my asset? Where's this piece of equipment or this car or this truck that my company owns? Who has access to that data set? Who is what is the state, the quality of that data asset? And these are just some of the components. And all of that really encompasses into a cultural change in the organization to look at that data and realize that in order for us to be successful, the data steward, someone who data steward should be assigned to look after that data set. And we should we should have all the necessary tools for the steward to understand who's been accessing the data, how much value is that driving, what kind of impact does that data have in terms of downstream business operation. I think that all needs to come through. And in my view, it really does encompasses an entire shift in the way that a organization look at data themselves. And I think the key driver, the key executive that can drive that change are the CIO and the compliance officers. And these are, I think, the key people that are really going to lead that discussion. But to have that discussion with business is to start measuring what a governance policy would bring in terms of new revenue, right? So that previously I was using one of the charts around the trusted data delivery. On there, one of the key things is monitoring how you are monetizing on that data set. Right? That becomes a critical tool, and it's something that at IBM we're really looking at. Okay, how do we actually start measuring monetization of data from a CIO and from a compliance officer's perspective? Because that's how you bring that is how you bring the attention of the line of business, right? CEO will start to care if you can start placing a dollar sign and dollar figure on trusted data delivery. What is the impact if your data governance is in place compared to if that data governance isn't? I think that's some of the key capabilities that you need to look for.
Thank you, Mr. Kitman, for that answer. We are getting a lot of questions from our participants, so we'll stretch the time of the webinar a bit beyond 3 p.m. The next question is, can you please share 1-2 cases where customers have derived value using IBM OneArch?
Sure. Yeah, there's really quick one. There's so one of the big problem today, especially in Asia, is the import-export imbalance from Asia to other parts of the world, right? Asia is a manufacturing powerhouse in the world. So in terms of flow of goods into and out of the region, primarily goods are flowing out of the region a lot more than they are flowing into the region. So from a transportation company perspective, one of the greatest challenge is empty containers. You have many empty containers that need to move from Asia back to there's many empty containers that need to move from other parts of the world into Asia because they are coming in empty, right? So that creates a tremendous monetary problem. Whenever a container needs to move from let's say Europe back to Asia and it was empty, you're looking at about a $300 plus cost for logistic and transportation company. So IBM, for example, using data science and using an optimization capabilities that we bring, started looking at how to actually optimize placement and movement of containers for shipping company in order to reduce that empty movement cost by either predicting where containers will be needed, by start optimizing ships that has lesser cost. By using that, one of the most recent study that I've seen for one of our customers, I don't recall the customer's name at the moment. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of around $200 to $300 million worth of container cost saving in terms of moving empty container from one place to another. By looking at an optimization problem of data movement, by using computing techniques, operational research to start planning, using predictive capabilities as well to start predicting and then planning container movement, we were able to save that companies in the neighborhood of hundreds of millions of dollars a year in empty container transport.
Thank you, Mr. Kitman. So the next question is, how will data protection and privacy laws impact big data and analytics industry?
Well, interesting question. I think it's very much at the top of the mind of a lot of CIO, of course. Data privacy will continue to be a key driving factors in what we do as IT professional. New capabilities are coming all the time. So security of data, be it, for different technologies are really helping a lot in terms of security, all the way at the disk layer for self-encrypting disk, moving into database with RSA encryption, end-to-end communication encryption as well, then all the way into the front line, where as the data move out of the organization, the use of blockchain to share data in a secure manner, even with a distributed copy of the data set. This is really, really starting to evolve into a key area. I personally, I think more and more these solutions are going to come together and start to create an environment where data are going to be self-protecting, and it's going to be self-protecting and self-healing in many ways, where you can, in fact, share data more openly and widely with reduced risk. We're not quite there yet. So there's still a lot of research and a lot of work that needs to get done in order to get to that state. I mentioned blockchain before, right? A distributed ledger system. So Hyperledger is something that IBM's been working on. We are participating and we are at the forefront of looking at how to protect data in a different way, right? In the traditional way, I think it's about protecting the data in-house, controlling access. We still do that. We have governance capabilities or security capabilities that either that first lock down data behind our firewall, then providing gateway and providing trusted access. But I think also at the same time, we are researching new ways of sharing data securely so that that data will become more and more secure without having to lock them behind firewalls. So I think that's a lot of capabilities being researched around the Hyperledger space that IBM's working on. I think blockchain may even be on here somewhere as a capability that is really driving some of those discussions. I see that at some point in the future, and hopefully we'll get there soon, using technology like blockchain, using Hyperledger and capabilities like that, we start building applications that allow sharing of data in a trusted manner. I think, as an individual, I can use the example of healthcare record. I mean, I would love for example, to use blockchain technology to create new sets of data sharing solution around the healthcare industry, where everywhere I travel, I can get access, or, medical professionals can get access to my data set in real time, where I can grant them access at a given point. Because I think, because I travel extensively, so if I would ever need medical advice, I would like my doctor to have full access to my data set. So I'm hoping that using new data set, using new techniques, using new technology and innovation, we can start sharing data in a secure manner, and data privacy will become inherent in the data itself. Data control and data security will become ingrained into the data set itself.
Thank you, Mr. Kitman. Moving on, we have another question. What is the strategy that IBM would recommend organizations to follow in acquiring big data leadership resources? Since experienced resources have project management and architecture skills, but in non-big data areas, how can organizations make these people learn BI fast, and what paths is best recommended?
Okay. I mean, I think there's quite an interesting question there. I think there's a challenge faced by quite a few companies, I think, in the area. One of the things that makes it possible, and I don't want to sound like I'm pitching a product or anything, but is to partner up with an organization that can bring some aspect of those capabilities, a partner company who has experience in this space to really help drive adoption of technology, and maybe to collaborate with. So the question was, how do there's experienced project manager and professional who may not be so well versed in, let's say, the AI capabilities, the big data capabilities, and that type of project. One quick way is to leverage, for example, what I do, we quite often would create a project team where professionals from IBM would help through a design thinking workshop, for example, a data discovery workshop, to start planning and help organizations start planning their innovative project and the innovation, and start creating a roadmap for the longer term strategy, but at the same time taking that roadmap and breaking it down to tangible pieces that can be delivered, that can deliver immediate outcome between 30 to 90 days, right? So we actually have launched this thing called a data first method, where we are starting to help organizations start prototyping and creating new value based on their data set in a 30 to 90 days manner. And it's not the idea is not to sell a huge amount of services and implement for the client. The idea really is to create a workshop, create discovery, a design thinking workshop that helps customer create strategy, then taking that strategy and laying it out in stages in terms of multi-phase approach, then selecting a project from that entire roadmap, which becomes a smaller, tangible piece of delivery, and maybe, if the customer chooses to do so, help them deliver the first outcome. But the entire time is about transferring methodology, giving a customer a clear insight in terms of what strategy to follow, and showing them how to use the tools to start delivering the outcome, so that they can do it for themselves as they follow the rest of the strategy roadmap that we have laid out for them.
Dear participants, that's all we have time for. We will take the rest of the questions offline. With this, I would like to bring this webinar to a close. Thanks a lot, Mr. Kitman, for the wonderful presentation and all the responses. I would once again thank all the participants for attending the webinar. The recording of this webinar will be made available on etcio.com. To help us understand your data and analytics needs better, there is a short survey for you to take immediately after this webinar. We will appreciate and look forward to your valuable inputs. Thank you very much and have a great day ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for attending.